We talked about it a little bit last week. We hinted at it, and maybe the most stressful time for college basketball fans has already started as portal time is upon us. Welcome all into the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. I'm Zach Farmer. That's Thomas Dunn. And the obviously the portal's not officially open. We still have a few days before that becomes real. But the slew of big names from the WCC has already started to filter out. And obviously, like, that is going to cause an immense amount of stress for WCC fans across the board. Not so much for Thomas right now, because the Santa Clara Broncos have largely been untouched at this stage. But we'll get into what all of that looks like in just a bit. We'll talk about San Diego and how they have started to fill out their coaching roster in just a bit. Also, we'll talk about Pacific and some news out there, but we're going to start with at least some good news out of the WCC, as we're seeing Pepperdine has hired their new head coach in Griff Aldrich, coming over from Virginia. He was the associate there, and then was the head coach at Longwood from 2018 to 2025, took them to 2 NCAA tournaments. Now, again, like, thinking about what Pepperdine is going to be able to kind of do in this new era of Waves basketball, they have the Mountain at Mullen Hill, like, opening up this year. There's a lot of excitement to be had, and it does feel like this is maybe the right hire for a coach that has done very well at a smaller school with not as many resources as maybe some other mid-major programs has had in the past.
Yeah, I kind of share that, and I think one of the other things that kind of stood out is usually you get like a whole list of candidates that have been kind of flying around. Pepperdine largely, I think, kept this under wraps really till about the day before, is when like those reports started coming out that Griff Aldrich was going to be the guy for the Waves. And you think of kind of the way he's kind of bounced around, going from Longwood to being with longtime buddy and Ryan Odom. Now, when he was a lead assistant at Virginia, it's like he was ready to like keep himself at a high power, stay out east, and then all of a sudden here comes this out west opening. A guy who's made 2 NCAA tournaments with Longwood over in the Big South. And it's like, hey, you get the keys to kind of go do it again and kind of take yourself up a little bit of an echelon compared to the Big South. And I think it's an interesting hire, because I think when you look at Griff Aldrich's teams and the way Longwood represented themselves, especially in the conference tournaments, because it's so hard to take a 2-game sample size when you're facing Tennessee and Houston of all teams. In the NCAA tournament, you're more often than not, as a smaller team, you are not going to fare well. And that's kind of exactly what happened. So I don't think it's entirely fair to draw on that 2-game sample size. I would go kind of take a look at those Big South tournaments in 2022 and 2025 to get a real feel. And I think, like you mentioned, Scrappy, I think, is among it. You look at a team that's going to play hard, play disciplined, and play together. I think that's kind of some of the principles that kind of stick out immediately when you kind of take a look back to those Longwood teams that ended up making runs, especially I believe it was the 2025 version, that they didn't have a great regular season, relatively speaking. Like, they were like, I believe 5th or 6th in conference, and then had to go on one of those like March runs to get in the dance, and did so. So I look at that. I think there's a lot to like in terms of the floor raising. You mentioned the Mountain at Mullen. Obviously, that's a big time injection of things. I kind of parallel them and San Diego together in terms of new facilities, new NIL, new everything. It's like you kind of have a clean slate, so to speak. And I'd be really intrigued to see how Griff Aldrich kind of attacks that clean slate, for lack of a better phrase, and kind of how he kind of puts his own stamp on this team, especially because a Pepperdine team that just ultimately kind of lacked talent last season.
You mentioned the run in 2025. Prior to that, 3 straight seasons of 20+ wins at Longwood. So there is a sustained level of success at that level. And Pepperdine, is looking for someone who can kind of raise that floor, as you mentioned, because the one thing is, like, we know that there's a lot of opportunity now in the WCC without Gonzaga, new era at St. Mary's. So it does feel like the field is wide open at this stage. And they needed some head coach with, I think, some success. And obviously they did not have that out in their last go with Ed Schilling. They had someone in that in Lorenzo Romar before that, but kind of underachieved, especially those last couple of years. So kind of turning the page here to Griff Aldrich. There is a press conference scheduled for the 7th, so we'll hear from him for the first time at that event. So again, this is very early on. The portal is still upon us. So we haven't heard a Pepperdine name actually announced at all in amongst the slew of announcements that have come out. So I mean, I imagine that we're going to see a lot of changes on the Pepperdine roster, and obviously there probably should be a lot of changes on the Pepperdine roster when you think about what they're going to look like moving forward and into next season. But this is a great opportunity for them to kind of start over, and it does feel like for the program that they have right now at the campus they have and in the conference they're going to be in, this is it's a step in the right direction. It feels like for the Waves.
And it's something that you kind of have to attack, as you mentioned, like kind of thinking I compare this again. I'm going to keep paralleling them in San Diego right now. You listen to what J.R. Blount said in his opening press conference and media session. It's like, look at the resource you have at your disposal. And that's before you get into the funding, the NIL and all that. Look at the backdrop that you have behind you. Like, it's not, I mean, do you think of some of these campuses in the WCC, like Pepperdine has a leg up on many of them just by pure stature of where they're at, how they stand, and kind of what you can envision yourself. I mean, hey, I was a kid who grew up on Zoe 101 that was filmed at Pepperdine. All right. I know damn well what that campus can be like. So that's a good one. And I think, a nice fun fact, if you're a Pepperdine fan looking to see, maybe what's kind of the angle here. We talked about what his Longwood success was. How about dating back to his time earlier with Ryan Odom, not even at Virginia. He was Odom's director of recruiting at UMBC, the same UMBC team that took down Virginia as the first 16 seed to beat a 1 in the NCAA tournament. He was on that staff as a lower level assistant for Ryan Odom. So, I mean, that's a nice factoid to kind of get your feeling for what a Griff Aldrich team kind of likes to do. You reference that. You reference what his time at Longwood is. I think there's a lot to like about the level of, experience and provenness that comes with a name, because we didn't really necessarily know where Pepperdine was going to go with the search. I mean, the name down at Point Loma Nazarenes have kind of been thrown out a lot of these jobs, especially down in Southern California with the level of winning they've been doing down there. So it's just to see kind of a new surprise, a new name into the fold, and a guy who can kind of carve his own identity out west. He hasn't necessarily had the time to do so, and I think it'd be an intriguing acclimation period, so to speak.
Absolutely. And he'll have to obviously be refilling that roster, filling out his staff. And you mentioned San Diego, which is a great segue to talk about, well, what San Diego has been up to, because J.R. Blount has started to fill out that staff that he's going to be alongside him on the bench. We've got at least the first few names, Patrick Baldwin, Jeremy Pope, and then also David Gale will be added to the San Diego staff. And there's a lot of basketball experience on this staff, most notably Patrick Baldwin, who was most recently spent the last 3 years at Valpo. He's been kind of all over the place. He's been at Georgetown, Northwestern, Missouri State, Loyola, Green Bay. There's a lot of basketball experience, and some head coaching experience that's going to be alongside a first timer on the bench. So that's like a big one. When you think about new head coaches, you really want someone alongside them who's done it before, has been through the grind, and can kind of be that sounding board when you need someone else alongside you for the mission.
Yeah, I think that's a valid way of looking at it, because you don't necessarily want them steering the ship, so to speak, because it's your own team. Like, you want to carve your own identity. You want to make sure your own principles are out there and that you're not just copy and pasting from the Milwaukee team where Patrick Baldwin Sr. was out there. And for those of you who are like, that's a pretty familiar name, the father of Patrick Baldwin Jr., who was a former 5-star recruit and former first-round pick of the Golden State Warriors. So you take a look at all that and you're like, okay, like what kind of experience can he kind of implore on J.R. Blount? I think the sounding board is the best way to put it. You mentioned the other two names of Jeremy Pope and David Gale. Gale and Blount, college teammates, actually, as they go back into their history over as Loyola Chicago Ramblers. So that's a really nice twist. They've both kind of been on their own separate paths for the time being. Gale, we mentioned what he did as there. Jeremy Pope is an assistant at UT Arlington, so over there in the WAC conference. Obviously, that's kind of dissipated. Both coaches kind of just a bit of a different types of experiences. I'd say all things considered, Gale coming from the Windy City Bulls in the NBA G League, Pope on the other hand, not like a plethora of experience more than anything, but they cited his experience with the TBT Syracuse alumni team in Boeheim's Army in the basketball tournament. For those of you who are familiar, for that winner take all tournament over the last couple of years, he's had some experience there. Is Jeremy Pope, and then as we just mentioned with David Gale doing what he did with the Windy City Bulls, and bringing that kind of Chi-town Midwest hoop feel out to the 619 for Jared Blount. So I went back and listened to Jared Blount's owning press conference, and I think he was consistent that his team is going to be consistent in every fundamental aspect of the game. And I think that's something you really want to see, where he's taken from TJ Otzelberger and a lot of the players for the Cyclones, including Joshua Jefferson. This is all the way back in the first and second round before things went haywire for them. Him, Momcilovic, and Taman Lipsy were all saying this is a guy who's ready to go, ready to hit the ground running. So I'm ready to learn more about these new USD assistants and kind of what they specifically bring to the table. But so far, I have no qualms. I don't think there really is a need to let Jared Blount start to execute his vision.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about Jared Blount, what San Diego has been able to do the last. We've talked a lot about what San Diego's potential is the last couple of weeks, and it's going to what happens in the portal, how they start to fill out this roster is going to be fascinating to kind of see the personality of what this team is going to be based on the personnel that they are able to bring in. And that's the challenge for everybody, because we're starting to see rosters are thinning out left and right here. We're going to get that into just a bit. One final coaching note before we hit those list of names, because there are a lot of them. Is a report from John Rothstein that Dave Smart has received a long-term extension from Pacific. Obviously, we know the job Dave Smart has done to this point in his first 2 years. We're both fans. A lot of the Pacific alums, fans are also kind of on board. I think this is obvious. It's a smart move. It's kind of the move you have to make. Obviously, we know that doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot. If he has a ton of success over the next couple of years, obviously we know big offers can come, things can change overnight or whatever else, but this does show a commitment from the university that they think they have the right guy, and they're going to throw that support behind him as much as they can until either the better offer comes, or maybe if he ends up staying there for the next 20 years.
Hey, I mean, there's no reason for Pacific to think they don't have the guy. I mean, through 2 years, and I think we both share the same opinion. I know some of the coaches share the same opinion. They're fundamentally sound, they're physical, and they are a pain in your butt to play. And that's something that we haven't been able to say about Pacific in years past. And I think you look at this year's notable development for the better part of the season, it was a hard time to go play at the Alex G. Spano Center. If I'm not mistaken, they were undefeated till February in Stockton. So I think you look at all that and you contextualize kind of the journey of what Pacific basketball had been prior to him getting there, and him kind of especially making the mark on defense and tough rebounding and along those avenues, exactly the right move and exactly the type of guy that should be rallied around. And I think exactly the type of guy that this community should continue to show out for. I know all the Pacific fans who listen into us and kind of online, they've been very complimentary of what Dave Smart has been doing. And I think that's great. And I think I'd like to see that kind of take shape inside the Alex G. Spano Center. Let's get some better crowds in Stockton, get some more investment in this team, because when you kind of look at the scope of the WCC, this, you can kind of carve out the Central Valley as your own. It's not that it's easy, but if you build it, they will come. I will say, we've seen kind of some adamant support over the years for some of the teams down there. And I think even going even further, southeast towards Fresno and stuff like that, when those teams are good in certain sports, they'll come out and support. And I think Pacific is on the right trajectory to do that. And I think it's important for the fans to continue to kind of reflect the investment that the athletic department is giving and that Dave Smart is giving with some more support.
Yeah, I think that they are one of the unique scenarios in the new version of the WCC, because unlike some of the others, especially almost every other team, they're not in a pro market. You look at obviously three in the Bay Area, you have one in Portland, Seattle, Denver, LA, and San Diego. Well, Pacific over in Stockton is the one that really kind of can have a stranglehold over its region and its area. And we know that when they are good, they can really have awesome environments in that building. Obviously, it's been a while since they've had that opportunity because they just haven't had the team to do it. But they have the building. The Spanos Center is a great facility. If like when that place can get rocking, like that is probably one of the better venues out west. And there's an opportunity for them to take those next steps with Dave Smart at the helm. And we see the personality of this team coming through this season. Hopefully, they're able to kind of build off of that going into next year. Obviously, the big piece is like replacing an Elias Ralph is not going to be an easy task, but there that is going to be kind of like amongst the chief opportunities for them is finding those other scorers, not just Elias Ralph, who's going to kind of be able to balance this team out. Because sometimes that was something that happened. It was very heavily on one guy on a few nights. So they can find that offensive balance, bring that same toughness, bring that rebounding. We're going to see a really competitive Pacific team again. And one who, I mean, they finished 5th this past year. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw them continue to climb in the WCC standings going into next season.
Yeah, I would expect them to kind of take that next step with the way this league is kind of shaken out to be. We don't know what St. Mary's is going to be. We don't know what USF is going to be. And I think while we have the coaching quantity in what Dave Smart is like, and you mentioned replacing Elias Rao, there's still a lot more to replace even beyond that. It was a senior heavy starting lineup. I mean, TJ Wainwright, Justin Rochlin. You think of the way they kind of use Jaden Clayton and Isaac Jack. I mean, those are a lot of names with a lot of experience going out the door for Pacific, and not really. I think that was more of a stylistic choice for Dave Smart in year 2, and going forward, you're going to need to find a lot more of that, I guess, unproven production to turn proven over the course of your player development. I think that's going to be really key for Pacific.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about just the way Pacific is able to kind of, just thinking about what they're able to do, what Pacific is able to bring year 3. I'm excited to see what Dave Smart's able to cook up in the portal and bring in the Stockton. But speaking about bringing people in, we know part of that is also the shuffling of people out, which unfortunately is where we have to turn our attention to now, because the portal is in full effect now. As mentioned before, players cannot officially enter the portal until the 7th, the day after the championship game. But we have a long laundry list of players who have already at least made their intentions known, that their intent to hit the portal is already out there. And for those who are watching on YouTube, can actually see this list that I'm putting up on the screen, because now this list is as of March 31st. Like we're recording this on April 1st. So there's already a bunch more. There's already a handful more names that are going to be added to this thing. And it is a lot. The names already, some you may already know: Mikey Lewis, Paulus Morauskas, Tony Duckett, Joel Foxwell, Jalen Shelley, Tyrone Riley, Legend Smiley. Like the list kind of goes on and on. The names that are not on this list that were added today: Liam Campbell, Dylan Shaw, both from St. Mary's, Jan Vide from LMU. Christian Hammond's also on this list that we're showing on the screen. It is just, it feels like it is the annual bloodbath of the portal, and just teams being kind of ripped up. Now, it's obviously it's a little bit new to see St. Mary's kind of being a part of this, because we're so used to seeing them have that continuity. But of course, new head coaching changes. We know that has a huge part in what happens in the portal. There's still plenty of time for, unfortunately, more names to be added to this list. But when you're looking at this, what's kind of jumping out at you, if anything, as far as like expectation? Because this has become the norm, but at the same time, it's like name after name. It just kind of feels like it's almost like a gut punch for every single one.
I mean, the thing is, we've been here and we've done that over the course of these last couple of seasons. You mentioned the newness of St. Mary's and kind of their version of the party of being in on this. I kind of look at almost much needed resets, so to speak, for LMU and USF. I mean, they just completely missed it last year. And sometimes it's better to just start fresh. And I think that's very apparent for the Dons. I think they just need a full reset. The team just, it'd be nice to retain a guy like Legend Smiley, just to acknowledge that part of it. But all things considered, I think it's not so much of a bad thing when you see some of these names go out the door. And I think anyone can go back and listen to some prior episodes to kind of get my inklings on that. Same deal for LMU. I mean, this is a program that has just quite frankly been really disappointing these last couple of seasons. I don't think anybody would stretch that to be a hot take. I think if anything, some LMU fans may be telling me maybe I'm being too nice. But that's something where they just need to find something of anything, because the clock's ticking down in LA for sure. So I think sometimes you look at the doom part of it for St. Mary's, and understandably so. I think other times when you look at it for like LMU and USF, it's kind of sometimes it's not so bad after all. But that doesn't mean you can just rest on your laurels and say, oh, I get an excuse that I missed it. No, it's like I have to go out and seize the opportunity of finding a way to rebuild these programs into a better spot.
I mean, LMU is definitely the one that kind of like, it's one of the ones that jumps out because you look at, there's already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 names from that roster that have hit the portal. St. Mary's is not far behind. They've had, actually, no, they're at 6 now too. Looking at the list they had 4 plus the 2 today. So they're right there with them. And it is a very different feeling on the St. Mary's side. Now, again, like St. Mary's lost 4 of their 5 starters a year ago, but this does feel very different. It feels different from a couple of years ago when they lost both Aiden Mahaney and Joshua Jefferson in the same offseason. It feels different from that because of the coaching change, because it's not even just the starters. You did lose a couple of the key bench guys as well, like Liam Campbell, Tony Duckett being the two kind of amongst, and Andrew McKeever being amongst those bench crew that is in the ship. And I think for St. Mary's, it is the what happens next. How is Mickey McConnell going to be able to kind of rebound from this and rebuild this roster? Because the one thing in this window of time, it's always it always is the painful part, because everything is an exit. You don't get to see what is potentially coming in, because even though we know the portal says like, oh, you can't actually declare, you can't be doing X, Y, or Z. We know things are happening behind the scenes in various places to start to rebuild these rosters, because you can't wait on the day to come next Tuesday for you to really start. You have to kind of already have some of your ducks in a row to know who's a actual viable option, who's available, who's in your price point. Because again, like all these teams thinking about their NIL budgets, what they can afford, how much they want to spend on certain guys. This all plays a factor. And you look at, Santa Clara is going to have to figure out how to spend their NIL with their current guys, how they are going to retain versus what they're going to have to go out and get. Because again, the Christian Hammond was on that list too. So like you try to go out and replace a Christian Hammond. USF probably going to be looking at a lot of an overhaul of that roster. Tyrone Riley, Legend Smiley, Barry Wong on that list as well. Is it going to be a big shift for the Dons? And we have seen at least some teams not have too many names pop up as of yet. I mean, I haven't seen a Pepperdine name yet. Not to think that I'm not going to see one eventually, but haven't seen one from them. We've seen only 2 from Pacific, 2 from Portland. Haven't seen a Seattle U name either from this list. So again, that doesn't mean we won't see one. I feel like it would be highly unlikely we don't see at least one from every team. But looking at how teams approach the next couple weeks is going to be a big key. Obviously, like the portal's doesn't close after a couple weeks, but it is a shorter window this year. So teams are going to have to act faster, and players are going to have to act faster on their own decision-making process. And thinking about what is left here is, because the flip side of this is we're starting to see commitments of guys who have said, no, I'm going to stay put. And at least there's some sense of, oh, there's a positive that comes out of this, because we've seen Josh Dent say that he's returning to St. Mary's. We've seen Will Heimbrodt say he's going to return to Seattle U. We also saw We
James O'Donnell from Portland.
say that he was going to return to Portland, and that's a big move. I think like we've seen some big pieces say that they're going to stay put, which again we can say like you have an anchor piece to kind of build around. James O'Donnell, I feel like would be one of those. Josh Dent is one of those. Will Heimroth is one of those. You can build around those pieces. At the very least, again, you have a all WCC first teamer, the defensive player of the year, a rising up and comer in James O'Donnell. Like you have some pieces to work with right now that have announced that they're staying put, and it's going to be a wild ride the next few weeks.
It is, and the one element to the transfer portal is that the grad transfers, it's already open on the move and stuff like that. So you mentioned like the back channels, like that's an area where things could be are already probably in motion for several WCC programs like that, from both going out and in. I think one of those extra elements you mentioned of kind of how St. Mary's is going to rebound is, I wonder, and you mentioned kind of the rebuilding of the Gales roster is kind of the level of like public and private information that comes in. I mean, you think of the fort that was Randy Bennett and St. Mary's, like you didn't know anything and nobody really knew anything of any rumblings coming out one way or the other under the Bennett program for 2+ decades. And that's part of the new reality under Mickey McConnell. What information is going to get out there? What information does he want people to know? What information does he not want people to know? Are there visits that kind of get moved over to national media and stuff like that? So I think kind of the public versus private battle for what Mickey McConnell wants to look at optics wise, I think it's going to be something that's has a different level of intrigue for St. Mary's. And especially when you look at, obviously some of the doom and gloom with some of the names that have entered the portal, and most notably, I think Dylan Shaw. I think it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world right now because yes, obviously it's a whole bit of change, but you have to still give the guy the opportunity to forge his own identity, and one that obviously already knows kind of what it takes to be successful as a Gale.
I mean, that is going to be a new reality of just, what is going to be kind of the in and out of information from Moraga, from that campus. Because the Dylan Shaw one kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, obviously it was always a possibility. I think it was kind of wishful thinking that his name was not going to end up in the portal for many. I mean, he was one of the few present at the Mickey McConnell press conference. So I think there was at least some level of, he might actually be one of the ones who returns because he was present. As we know, that is not the case. There was even some rumors out there about Liam Campbell had already committed back to St. Mary's. Obviously, there was no ever official announcement about that, but that turned out to not be accurate as well. So it's going to be a fascinating change there. But yeah, like today was a rough one for St. Mary's fans, like especially the kind of the back-to-back of the Dylan Shaw and then also Liam Campbell, because some of the early ones, the Mikey Lewis, the Paul Smarauskas, the Andrew McKeever, honestly did not come as a surprise to most. Tony Duckett did not come as a surprise to anybody. The two that were a bigger surprise were Dylan Shaw and Liam Campbell. The fact that we heard those two names today is kind of like when you think about the rotation that St. Mary's had a year ago, like that was kind of the last couple pieces of what they worked with on a night in, night out basis. Josh Dent is kind of now the lone ranger right now, as the one who announced that he would be returning. So I think it's going to be a big question mark of what does this team look like come September, October, November, and it's gonna look very different. And there was the joke I saw one account just using the meme from Major League of the workers, like, who the hell are these guys? Like that's exactly what it's going to feel like. Probably for most rosters, honestly. Anyway, but it's going to be a very unusual feeling for St. Mary's to feel that way, but USF is going to feel that way this year. It's going to feel that way for Pepperdine. It's going to feel that way for San Diego. It's going to feel that way for Portland. It's going to feel that way for a lot of teams this offseason, because it's going to be a very different offseason for WCC teams just because of the landscape of where we are today versus where we were a year ago. And we also have more coaching changes this year than we have had in a long time. That's the other component to this that I think kind of goes unnoticed. Last year there were none. We didn't talk about any coaching changes a year ago. So you held on to a lot of what the rosters look like, but now 3 new head coaches in the league. You add a new team in Denver into the mix. Like, this is going to be a very different feel. And the portal, if you thought it was painful now, get ready. It's probably going to get even more painful over the next week.
This is only April 1st. All right. We got a long time to go, and I'm sure, we'll be discussing more transfers from more schools in the coming days. But I will conclude very simply with this. I believe in Kevin Gadd's supremacy. So that will be your knight in shining armor for everyone over in the East Bay. So don't doubt Kevin Gadd.
I expect 5 threes a night from Kevin Gadd.
Let's do it.
It's like Pacific does not sign on for that.
No.
All right. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you are listening to the show. Follow along on social media at unofficial WCC pod. We'll be back with more portal madness over the next couple weeks. That's Thomas. I'm Zach. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we will catch you later.